Hey guys, welcome back for another video. So since I've been doing videos on car detailing, just, total amateur status here, but been doing it for years, and I've been doing specifically videos about ceramic coating, I've been getting a ton of questions about it and comments, and people are just kind of lost on exactly what kinds of things I'm talking about. So today I'm going to go through some of the very common, very popular options here and tell you exactly what they're for, when you use them, why you may or may not want to, and what the right choice is for you. First, really quickly, I have to go over why you need any of this, and that's because your car paint is extremely soft. A lot of people are under the misconception that, wow, a car is painted, it's supposed to last for a lifetime and look great. No. The car's paint is there to protect the metal underneath from rusting. That's it. It happens to look pretty most of the time, and that's what we want to keep going. We want to keep that paint looking great and maintaining its protection for the car underneath. And there's whatever is on the very top is the wear layer. All right. So if your paint is on top, if it's just out there exposed to the elements, it's the wear layer, and it will wear very quickly. The paint is a multi-coat process. You have the very top coat, which is called the clear coat, and that's because it's paint that's clear, and it's there to add a little bit of gloss and protect the color, which is directly underneath that. That color might have more than one layer just to make the color or add some sparkle or metal flakes or whatever, but it's there just to add the color. And then underneath that, there's at least going to be a primer and sometimes a base coat. And that's there to help the paint bond to the metal, and again, to add that little extra layer of protection for the metal itself. Now, if that's just left to be out in the weather and the bird crap and the acid rain and all that kind of good stuff, that clear coat will very quickly wear away, and it will fade, and it will discolor, and it will crack, and it'll look like crap. And you might have seen the cars out there with the roofs that look like the paint's just going. Well, that's exactly what happened. It's because they don't use any protection. So you got a lot of choices. The very common, the old school way is to simply use a paste wax. And I love this stuff, primarily because they smell so good. If you're like used to the smell of the beach and tanning oils and lotions and all that kind of good stuff, oh, it smells just, classic. This is just the old school classic stuff. What you have is literally a tin of paste wax, and it's kind of like coconut butter. It's that consistency. If you press on it, it kind of liquefies really quickly with just a little bit of heat, but it is solid in the can. And that's why they're a little bit of a pain in the butt to apply, which you'll either have to use as a separate sponge, or like this one, you give you this little container for it. Come on now. And it's just a regular old little sponge, but it doesn't really matter what you use. You could use a rag, you could use a microfiber, and you dab a little bit on the rag, and you start rubbing it into the car and smearing it, heating it up, getting it to cover. And then you wait for it to fog up, and you wait for it to dry out, because the water and the moisture in here is going to evaporate over a few minutes or maybe half an hour. And then you have to buff it out pretty vigorously. You can either use a machine polisher or do it by hand for a lot more work. And that leaves you a coating of a transparent wax, a natural wax. And Carnauba is the traditional choice for cars. And that will protect your car for actually quite a long time, as long as you don't wash it too much. Now, what's the downside of that? Well, it's temporary, and it takes by far the most work to apply. You do it once, you're gonna be spending half a day on the average car, and you're gonna be working up a sweat. It's no fun, but it smells great. So that's paste wax. Pretty much nobody uses that anymore. Now, beyond the paste wax, I'm sorry I don't have one to show you because I haven't used them in years, are the really inexpensive bottles of lotion-like material. And you might see them say that they'll last for a year or they'll last for so many miles, that kind of thing. They're usually about 10 bucks a bottle, and you simply squirt them onto a rag, kind of the same thing as the wax, except it's very easy just to wipe on. You wait for it to haze, and then you buff it off, and it's definitely easier to buff off than the wax. Problem is, it's exactly the same kind of temporary protection. It's water soluble, so the rain eventually does wash it off, and if you go through car washes, it takes even quicker. So those kinds of polish in a bottles, they're better than wax as far as applicability. Don't last quite as long, but they're super cheap and super easy. So that's a draw of them. I don't bother with that. Now, ceramic coatings right here are definitely one of the latest things on the market. There's also graphene, and that's pretty much the same thing. It's just a different type of material in solution here. Actually, it's a solvent in here, not a solution. And you're gonna find these kind of crossing over in different types of products. This is just straight ceramic coating. This is applied a few drops at a time to an applicator and wiped on in a very, very thin film that you can barely see. Doesn't take much. This bottle goes a long way. Now, some are diluting it and putting it into a spray bottle, like this bottle, not this product, but like this bottle, in a water-soluble solution, and you spray the car with it, and you wipe it off, and a little bit of the ceramic coating in there stays on the car. And while it is a technical ceramic coating, it is not as durable as using it straight. Don't expect years of protection like you can get from this type of product, but it's easy to apply. You simply spray it on. You can spray it on the rag and apply it that way. You wait about 30 seconds to a minute, and you very lightly buff it off. It comes off very easily, and that's it. It's really easy. But again, on the temporary side. Next up, you have this gel-based, very much the same concept. It is diluted ceramic coating, but instead of in a spritz bottle, it's in a gel. And it's kind of like a very, very thin hair gel. It flows, but it's not liquid. And it goes on very easy, again. Now this you apply with a little cloth or applicator, and you just spread it over the car. And kind of like the wax, it very quickly just kind of melts into the paint, and it leaves a very thin film. The water in it evaporates, and after a minute or two, you very easily wipe that off. And just like the spray ceramic coating, it leaves some on the car. But again, not nearly as much as applying it direct. When you apply this, there's just enough solvent in here to keep the ceramic coating from crystallizing. And the solvent will evaporate in seconds to a minute at the most on the car itself, leaving 100% ceramic coating. So this is a very relatively thick, to these two types of ceramic coating product, durable, lasting coating. So this is the best you can get, the direct, not this particular brand, use whatever brand you like, but a bottle of pure ceramic coating. That's the best you can get. All right, so upside to these types of products is cost. They don't last as long. They are both super easy to apply, but you're going to be applying them a few times a year. It's not hard. It does require prepping the car. You have to wash it. You have to make sure it's completely free of all contaminants, so you probably want to clay bar it, and you may want to clean it with a stripper to make sure there's no excess wax or quick detailer or anything you put on in the meantime left, and then you can apply these again. And like I said, a couple times a year to maintain a really good coat. But if you don't want to do that, if you want something that's going to literally last for multiple years, you get direct and you do it once the right way. So those are the real good modern types of protection for your paint. Now, these products here are used to correct problems and make sure that things are good in preparation for any type of protection you're going to put on. So I'll go in order of magnitude here. This is scratch and swirl remover, also called compound. This is for aggressive correction of things that are already bad in your paint, like scratches and swirls, maybe from somebody that tried to use the wrong type of polisher and left some scratches and swirls or whatever. Any kind of scratches in the paint that hasn't gone down to the metal can be taken out with a type of compound specifically for it. Now, this is a very aggressive compound. It's kind of like a real gritty sandpaper compared to a real fine sandpaper. Or think of a real rough loofah sponge, right? So this stuff digs through the paint and it levels it down. So if you got a scratch in your paint, you can't fill that in. You have to bring down everything around it. So this basically just adds a hell of a lot of scratches right around where you're trying to fix it. Now you might think, well, why in the world would you want to scratch your paint up worse to fix your scratches? Because you have to bring it down to a level playing ground. Once you get everything around it scratched, then you can fix everything at once and it'll still look the same. You can't just fix one scratch. You got to bring everything down to a milder scratch, but more of them. So that's what this does. After this, you have to follow it up with this polishing compound, or just sometimes called polish. Polish is a very mild abrasive. There's still abrasion little bits in here, but it's enough where you don't see any kind of damage. It actually makes it glossier. It makes it shiny. The scratches that this applies are so fine that it fixes everything left by this and makes it shiny. So it polishes it. So this is always a two-step process, but you don't start with this. This is your last resort. Well, the last resort would be repainting, but this is your last resort for actually using to try and fix something. And you always use this with a dual action machine polisher. Don't ever bother trying this by hand. Does not work at all. You get terrible results and you will burn out your hand. This stuff you can apply by hand, but if you're trying to follow this up, forget it. It has to be applied by machine. If you're just polishing up, normal everyday stuff like water spots, no problem. You can do it by hand. That'll happen very quickly. But this is usually done by machine also. And like I said, it's very, very mild. And as I mentioned, it's very commonly used to take out water spots. If you live in an area and like me, you park outside and your car's always getting wet, if you don't have adequate protection on your paint, the water spots will dry up and you'll be left with rings. And that's what it's showing here on the label. All these little spots here are water spots. As the water spot evaporates in the sun, it leaves a ring of whatever was in that water, because it's not pure water coming from the sky. There's crap in it. It dries and cooks itself onto the paint. And it's very mild. It's not a big deal. This stuff basically just scours a very, very thin layer off the top. So that's what polishing compound is for. Now, after you've done all that, you are still left with contaminated paint, even if it's a brand new car. Paint is very soft if you haven't gotten that yet. Everything damages and falls into the paint. I'm not kidding. Anything in the atmosphere goes into your paint. Pollen, bird crap. New cars, if they come by train, will have the little bits of iron the iron dust created from the steel and iron wheels of the train cars on the train tracks, just kicking up dust in the air as it's going down the tracks. That dust will settle on the paint and eat through it. And it'll just stick there, a little piece of iron, microscopically, but in there. Dirt does it. I mean, everything sticks in your paint. It's very soft. Clay bars are literally bars of clay. Make sure my hand's clean here. And they pull out anything in your paint. They don't stick to the paint, because what you use is quick detailer, which really should be called lubricant. That's really all this is good for, is lubricating something like a clay bar. The idea behind a quick detailer is, if for some reason you can't or don't want to wash your car and get it wet, you can spritz it with this and wipe it with a cloth. Not always a good idea, because you can very easily scratch it by wiping anything that's dirty. And it's got a little tiny bit of wax in it. So if you do use one of these, make sure that you're matching whatever you put on your car. So if you've got wax on your car, go ahead and use one of these that has some kind of wax in it. If you use a ceramic coat, make sure you use one of these that is actually a ceramic coat quick detailer. Otherwise, you're putting wax on your ceramic and it just doesn't work as well. But anyway, this is used as lubricant for this. So you just spritz part of your car. This is pretty much like a stiff Play-Doh. You just make a little puddle of it. And then what you do, if your car is wet, you rub this along the paint and it catches and pulls out anything in the paint, and you feel it as you're going. If it's clean, if everything underneath it is just paint, it just glides, that's it. But usually it's not. First coating try especially, it'll go, and then next time it's like that. And you just pulled out, all the stuff you see in here is stuff I pulled out of paint previously. All these little bits. And then once a side gets kind of dirty, you just fold it over, puddle it back out again. Eventually you just throw this out when it gets too dirty to use. Takes quite a while depending on the cars you're doing, of course. And that's it. Now, one caveat with this, if you ever drop this onto anything dirty, like if I was to drop this here, this is just some paste that came off the wax can there, but if this were the ground and I accidentally dropped this on the ground, it's done. Throw it out, because it just absorbed everything on the ground into the clay bar. And if you ever tried to use that again on your car, you're gonna scratch it up. So it's enough in here that you can pull out the small contaminants in the paint, but not enough where if you get it really contaminated that you would ever want to use it on a car, even if it's dirty. So that's all a clay bar is. And the benefit of this is it gets you a perfect surface ready then for your ceramic coating or your polish or your waxes, whatever you're going to be applying. This gets you the 100% perfect surface. And this doesn't need to be done all the time. Certainly when it's brand new, hit it once. If you have never done it, you are going to be absolutely amazed if you've got any kind of decent mileage on your car. Believe me, these are dirt cheap. You can find all of this stuff except the ceramic coating at pretty much any auto store. You'll find the spritzes and the gel at a lot of auto stores or Walmart. But this kind of stuff, if you want to do it right, you do have to order it. Now, I used previously on a number of vehicles here, the same type of bottle from a company called Gloss It, and I absolutely love that stuff. Unfortunately, they've gone pro business only. They don't sell most of their stuff anymore to consumers. The good thing is there are a bunch of other companies out there that have also joined the fray, and this one actually tests better, so that's fine, and it's less expensive than the last bottle I bought. So prices have been coming down over the years. This particular one, I got it in a whole kit. I just did a video on it, so you can check that out. And you're well under $100 for everything you need starting from scratch. If you just need a bottle of solution, almost half that. So it really depends on what you're going for. Anyway, hope this helps. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'll try to answer them. But Google is your friend. And if you have any experience with these types of products and you want to pass on tips to people, please leave them down in the comments. See you next time.